those create the leverage to, to figure these specifics.
To start on like 4 hours, but like I'm out of 10 because it's just kind of they're all over. We're all really students and it's a bunch of everybody's
do something.
Yeah, I'm pretty crazy. We're talking about that.
Jake did give me his cell phone number so that we can call him when the time comes. Right. And he'll be able to, he should be able to hear everything that's happening. Hi.
Put this over here.
Thank you, Chris.
I
know.
For Bonnie to be here for like 3 minutes.
Can everybody who's watching the stream hear me? Can you hear me okay? Just want to test my mic volume. Thank you, baby.
Oh, you're welcome. That was. What I said.
Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, cool. Thank you, Katie.
Is that Katie Jordan?
Yes. You can't see her. She's just sending messages via, so you can see the live.
Hi, Katie.
There's the Hi, Katie. Hopefully I'm positioned okay. That's good, right? David goes to my space, so he'll be coming over here.
Not too scary yet.
Pictures and videos.
And then you can be in it. Becca's like, I don't want to be in it. My password is like 4679, right? So that you're just going across in case it wants that.
Okay. And I just make it funny because it's your story.
Whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just something for all the fans, you know? Oh, that's what's missing. I was like, I know there's something missing right now.
So I'll introduce you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I forgot to tell you that bit.
Well, Mary demonstrated, and so did Becky the other day. So yeah, I got to. Thank you. Becca, Jake's gonna call my phone. No. My suggestion would just be that, like, after I present, connect me with us. If that makes sense. Perfect. All right, great, thanks. Bye.
Yes, exactly. Really dense.
Is it that time?
It's up to you at that time.
I think it's that time.
Wait another minute or two.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm good. Okay.
Just make sure that I don't put the drink somewhere where I'll spill it.
I don't know how to do anything on a PC.
I'm happy we're talking about this. All right, hi everybody. Thank you for coming to Sharon's defense of the document that she wrote in relationship to her project called No Doors, which, if you had an opportunity to see, was a site-specific, immersive, reactive, and interactive work that was a huge undertaking, and we feel was quite successful. But today is our opportunity to hear a little bit about what is in her bound document, and for us to ask her questions about that. So the way that it will work is Sharon has some information to share with us. The committee will ask questions. Anybody else can ask questions after that. We'll ask you to leave while the committee makes a decision, and then things will all be fine. Okay, all right, so Sharon.
Hi. First, thanks for being here. I'm really appreciative that you're all here, including everyone who's actually watching. I have a live stream going right now on YouTube, and there's quite a few people on there at home watching. Hello!
How many?
I'm sorry, right now it looks like there is 6 people, 6 different streams running, so that's exciting. So I thought that to start us off, I would just give you a little bit about the project I did, right? So obviously, like Karen said, oh, welcome. Right, who did that? Like Karen said, this is really about talking about my document, and my document is a reflection of this project that I had done, right? So in an effort to help get us there, I'm going to tell you a bit about the project. So to begin with, I was looking at this question of here, I'll just read it. My thesis project explored interdisciplinary strategies for making interactive, reactive, immersive installations that drew audiences into an experience and encouraged active observation and or participation. It's a little bit of a mouthful, right? But what I did was I had this amazing opportunity and this amazing space that was an old radio station. And I took that old radio station, which you'll see here, and I transformed it. But before I could transform it, I had to kind of take the space where I was at into consideration. A lot of the work that I was drawing upon concepts from site-specific work, and this is where that all kind of began, was looking at the site where the project was going to be, where it's going to live, right? And so this video shows you the radio station in its raw form after we had kind of pulled some things out of it to make space for you to make that video. And what's really fantastic is that the space had this one really large studio in the middle, and then these 3 other studios off to the side. So there was this built-in level of connectivity already in the environment that I was working with, which was really important to me as an artist because, I think that what we do at its finest level is connecting with other human beings in some way. So to be able to build that into the actual work itself was really awesome. And then what I did was I took the space you just looked at and I kind of transformed it. This video footage was actually shot by Lawrence. Thank you, Lawrence. And so what the project did was you introduced touch to people as they came into the space.
so that they kind of understood that there's some rules, if you will, and those rules were really that there were rules, that you were supposed to, that you were encouraged to touch and explore and become part of the work. And so as people came in, they had a choice. They could go straight in to where this projection was. They could kind of veer off to the left where there was this room covered in this blue material, or off even further to the left where there was all these projections happening, right? So there was a lot of choice immediately, and this idea of providing agency was huge for me, right? And so then people could kind of just go on this adventure throughout the space. There was 5 different installations, all with an aesthetic approach that was based on these 5 elements. So earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And so that's what I did, right? And it was pretty phenomenal. It was a 6-month undertaking, right, to build all of these interactive installations that provided agency and choice and allowed for people to explore something that it was really, I don't know, I was really excited by it, and I'm still very excited by it. So it's also interesting and hard for me to put language to that excitement and joy. One of the main things, as I returned to my research question, was providing an opportunity for active observation and or participation. So providing these opportunities for people to participate with the work. And so because the project was so big and my document is reflective of that, I thought I would focus today on the discoveries I made. And so the project itself kind of goes through an introduction, the background, the methodology, all the typical things. But really, like I said, in my evaluation and my conclusion is where I got to some really juicy stuff, right? And I made some really amazing discoveries about myself, about the work I had created, about what I value as an artist. And so for me, the importance of knowledge acquisition, the existence of parallels between modalities, I'll talk more about all of these things real quickly, the sense of accomplishment afforded by unseen labor, and then the necessity for embodied exploration in the design of the work, and in the design of the work, right? So first, knowledge acquisition, which is pretty straightforward, right? You know, it's important to me that whatever I do, whatever I create, creates an opportunity for myself to gain new knowledge, whether it's knowledge about doing a physical act, making a thing, or it's knowledge of like self-discovery and things like that. That's really kind of important to me. And I knew it was important before I started the project, and I talked about it in my introduction, and then I was able to kind of bring that full circle and really put some language to that, which I was excited about. The next thing are the parallels between modalities. And what I mean when I say modalities is the parallels between design and prototyping and what we do in terms of the choreographic process. I made some really interesting connections there for myself, right? I discovered that, you know, there's a lot of consistency between the two, and that both are really opportunities for rich data gathering, whether that's, like, again, back to the knowledge acquisition, data gathering on myself or on like these things that I wanted to discover and learn how to do, right? But there's 2 really big things that kind of came from this project, and one is this idea of unseen labor. And I thought that how can I really talk to you today about unseen labor? And the best way for me to do that was to demonstrate, right? So unfortunately, I don't have one for everybody, but my faculty has in front of them a box, right? And I have one for my friend back over there, right? So this box, right? If you hold up the box, you look at the box, you say, oh my gosh, right? You took the time to make me this thing. Well, what does that mean to take the time, right? So as artists in our creative process, we spend a lot of time doing what we do, but it was really important to me to kind of say, what does that mean, right? So there's the time that it took to construct the box, right? But then you could back up and say there's the time that it took to design the box so that I could construct it, right? And then there's the time that it took to think about the design to construct the box. But then there's the time that it took for me to say, I have to plan something that's going to illustrate this for my committee and all the people who are here today, so what can I do? So you can kind of trace this lineage of labor, if you will, back far beyond what I'm holding in my hand, what they have in front of them, right? That we have so much unseen labor, and I almost don't like the word labor. It has a little bit of a negative connotation that I've kind of put on top of it, because for me it wasn't laborious or unpleasant. That was fun. It was fun to think about today and to think about how I wanted to position this and how I wanted to show you all what unseen labor was for me. And so that's what this was, right? This was a way for me to do that. But in doing that, right, we get to this idea of embodied exploration. And so embodied exploration was a huge part of the project I made. It was saying, like, in order for me to understand my project, I had to embody it on some level, right? So if y'all want to don't take what's inside your box out, but open them up, right? You open up your box, you'll see inside it, there's a top, right? So here's this top. And I'm going to pull out my paper because I really did spend some time writing some questions out that I want to just ask, right? So don't take out the top. Just by looking at it, right? How heavy do you think it is? What do you think it feels like in your hands? If you didn't know what this was for, could you guess? Could you like come up with an idea for that, right? And I do have a couple others. So Becca, would you mind maybe passing some of these around? So people can see it as well. Thank you. So at home, right, I have a top. So, this top, like I said, just by looking at it, it's a top. How heavy is it? What does it feel like? What do we think it does, right? And you can come up with some answers to this right now without actually saying them out loud. You could come up with some answers to what you think this is. But if I said to you, okay, now take it out. So you can take it out, grab it, and hold it. And now you can feel in your hands, oh wow, it's actually quite light. That what I was feeling was the weight of the box, right? And you can feel it's made of wood. And you can even maybe like tell me how you, don't spin it yet, right? You can tell me what you think you would do with this, right? So, I mean, if somebody wants to, I would definitely offer the opportunity. Could you tell me in words how to use this? Anybody want to try?
Well, she asked to do it.
I like that, Mary. So I'll give it a try, and this is kind of what I came up with. If I was going to describe to you without actually trying it first how this thing works, I would say that I'm going to grab it. I'm going to put some of these things down. I'm going to grab it by the skinny part, and I'm going to place it on a flat surface, and I'm going to spin. Right? That's what I would say if I was going to try and tell you how to do it. Well, do it. So take your top and spin it. Roll. Top on the loose. Right, so if you spin this top, damn, it's got the hard one to spin, Becca.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry.
It's amazing. So what I'm curious now is, how does this experience of spinning the top change what you know about the object, right? How does the experience change what you can tell me about how you use that object, right? If I never told you to pick it up, could you tell me what to do? Yes, probably. But how much richer or how much deeper is the knowledge that you now have about this object now that you've actually done the thing, right? For me, this is like the best kind of metaphor I could come up with for my project. Because yes, I could look at these things from a distance and know them and make assumptions about them. If I took, for example, the fabric that I used I call it fabric because once I crocheted it all together, it became a fabric. I could tell you how I thought it would feel to touch it, but it wasn't until I actually, rubbed my hand across it that I really understood what it meant. what it felt like. And it wasn't until I actually rubbed my hand across it that I could say, oh, this is how I think that people would engage with this, or this is how I think the sound of water should be with this, right? It wasn't until I embodied the activities that I really understood them, right? And embodiment wasn't just in terms of like my experience designing it, it was also my way of understanding how I assumed my audience, who I was trying to create something that would engage them to participate with, how they would react, right? It was a way of understanding or discovering what I thought those possibilities were. And so it was really interesting because not only did I have this experience of embodiment, but I created a project that I feel like can only really be understood if you experienced it. So if you didn't go through the exhibit, you can look at a video, you can see a picture, but you'll never really understand what it was unless you had that experience firsthand, right? And then if you kind of like take it even further, this idea of embodied exploration, because so much of embodiment was a component in the design and the development of the project for myself, and then in the experience for the participants, it almost became as if anyone who went through the installation was embodying a piece of me, a part of me, because that was there, that those connections were there, that embedded memory was there, that energy, right? It's in the space. You can feel it when you go in. So like for me, I needed to find a way to say those things, right? And then I thought that the only way for you to understand them would be to hold them and to touch them and to embody them. It was like this idea that I had, not that you all aren't completely capable of understanding this concept without it, but that it kind of proves my point in a way that our understanding of a thing becomes so much greater when we have the ability to physically put it within ourselves, right? And those were really the main discoveries that kind of came through in my project. And there's a lot more in that document, but I felt like those were really the things that I wanted to talk to you about, today. And so, I mean, really, I don't have anything else to add. I'm really excited to hear your questions. So thanks for listening to my presentation.
All right, so Jessica and David and I have some questions for Sharon.
Yes.
So who wants to start? I can go first. So I'm going to call it the Being John Malkovich effect because that's what you call it in the paper.
Yeah.
I'd like you to just talk a little bit more about what is it about this work in particular that provides that effect. And could you say that that's true of all types of our work? Also, I would like to hear about how the importance of the Being John Malkovich effect, how does that point to an artistic value for you?
Jake, you're on speakerphone.
And how does that relate? And how does that relate to audience agency?
I might need you to repeat a couple of these questions. So Being John Malkovich, in my paper, I wrote about this idea, which I literally just touched on, that by going through the exhibit, I felt as though my participants were having an embodied experience with myself. So to go a little bit deeper into that, even still, is that, for example, in the water room, right? The panels that I crocheted in that room, which I did talk a little bit about this, all were made throughout a 6-month process. And in each of those panels exist memories and places and conversations and these events that occurred in the process of that creation, right? And so then they got put into this space, and then I had some other people who also came in and helped me create that room, and help do a little bit of crocheting and latch hooking and like things to really fill out the space. And so there became all of these embedded memories, and with those memories, and I'm a firm believer of this, an amount of energy. And so that's just the kind of creation of the material. Then you go into like the time I spent in the room touching it and experiencing it myself, and then figuring out what sound I thought was right for it. And that for me, it was about a sound of like pushing water, because I was pushing on the material, and so those were the sounds that I chose, right? And so now you put all of it together and you invite people into the space, right? And they begin to experience, in a way, what I've experienced. Some of it might be inherent, and some of it might be obvious, and some of it not, right? So as you touch it, you would hear the sounds I chose, and maybe you would make the connection that, oh, this feels like pushing through water, and sounds like pushing through water. Maybe you would make that connection. But, and then there's the other embedded memories that I was talking about. They don't necessarily know that they're there, but maybe they feel the presence of that energy. And so for me, that's really what that being John Malkovich effect is that it's this opportunity for people to enter into my world. Yeah. And so then in terms of like, do I think that's in all or in other work? I definitely think it's present in other work. My gut reaction is I want to say that it's more so present in work where you have an opportunity to, I don't even want to say that. See, initially I wanted to say that it's only, there when you get to touch or experience or embody, right? But I don't actually believe that either. I think that on some level, when we make work for stage and we pour ourselves into that those who get to be present for those moments are also being present for that same effect. So I do think it's there as well. What were some of the other questions? I apologize.
I think just the last one is, how does that, the desire for being drawn out of the effect, how does that point to an artistic value for you?
Okay. I don't know. Because for me, it was the artistic value was in this idea of embodiment. I don't know that I had kind of processed it beyond that. I would have to spend some time thinking about it. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. That's great.
Question for you.
Please.
So in the document, you have a section about unseen labor. And in many ways, it's pointing to a lot of critical scholarship that's going into invisible labor.
Right.
I didn't know, I guess the first question was changing the word from invisible to unseen a choice. And in that, I hear it in your presentation even more than I see in the document, but it's sort of a yearning to discourse with this idea of invisible labor, which is sort of the opposite of what you're talking about, which is this idea of the invisible labor of mundane tasks that are used to prop up and support our sort of socio-cultural, socio-economic infrastructure. And so I'm curious a little bit of like, where do you see that discourse happening, and how would you deepen that if you had time or if you did another project?
Right. It was definitely a conscious choice, because what you just described, I was not in a position to talk about. In a way that I felt was representative of the discourse you're talking about. So I had to shift my language to really represent the things that I did want or feel were something I was in a position at this point to talk about. And I think the main reason I can't speak to the idea of invisible labor like you're talking about is because I don't know enough about it beyond my own experience. And I do recognize that my experience now in doing this has afforded me a definite level of understanding and authority, if you will, to be able to participate in that conversation. But I feel like in order to be able to do that, I need to learn more myself about it. So that's why the shift occurred. I definitely think that it's also something I identified, and I think it was in there that I say that this is the area where I think that there's a lot of room for growth and exploration, both in myself and kind of at large, because there's something really like rich there, but I don't, until I learn more, feel like I'm in a position to talk about it in that way. David, do you have any questions?
Okay. I'm curious about this, back to this John Malkovich metaphor. We've talked a lot about accessing artwork at different levels.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think where that metaphor is, it maybe starts to break down a little bit for me, is that it sort of signals that the best case scenario is that the people viewing your work get to experience it the way you experienced it, or that transmission takes place somehow. And I think what's interesting about artwork in general is that at some point the artist loses control over what people experience, what they take away from it, in a good way, and that maybe the people could take away something we didn't intend at all, or have affect them in ways that are in some way deeper than what we even intended.
Right.
So if that happened, how would you even, I mean,
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, my initial kind of response to what you're saying is that I think that what I wanted to identify is that that opportunity was there for people to connect with me through the work. Not that that was the only opportunity. So if I did allude to that, then I definitely need to fix it, because I fully agree with you, and I know because we have talked a lot about this, is that we don't have control of how our audience engages with or connects to our work once it's in their hands. For example, the water room, right? I had desire to brush it, but I remember in one of my focus labs, you talked about wanting to squish it, which was not something I was inclined for. So I definitely acknowledge that there's other opportunity, and I'm excited by it. I think that that was one of the things that I was most grateful for when the classes came through, is talking to those students and hearing how they connected with the work, because a lot of times, or sometimes, it was vastly different than how I had intended or how I thought it would be. So the being John Malkovich thing, I think, was really just a way for me to say that because all of that was present, that the opportunity was there for people to make those connections.
Do you remember what were some of the surprises that they relayed?
It's interesting. I'd have to go back and look at some of that data. I didn't bring, of course, any of it with me. Should have known you would ask me about this too. They were your students. It's interesting. The one thing that's sticking out for me right now is when people talked about how they thought the project could be more than it was. That they thought I could have done more, which I know isn't really applicable to this, but it's just kind of standing out for me right now. I think that there was a great example. Man, I want to pull it up. Where two people were talking about the same thing and had completely different opinions on it. And my mother's probably like flipping out right now because she knows exactly the two bits of information I'm talking about, and I wish I had them to like pull one right now.
Is she one of the YouTube streamers?
She is. Mom, pull it up! Post it! Pull it up! She did a lot of editing on the documents, so she knows what's there. Her and Katie. Can I get back to you on that?
Jake, do you have any questions for Sharon?
Yeah, I have a couple, but the one I want to start off with is a hypothetical. So a lot of the creative process here, as you talked about with the unseen labor, has been driven by exigency or by physical constraints. Can I ask you to teach that thought exercise? Can you try to imagine project and if you had $50,000 of staff of 5 and 2 months uncovered by any other responsibility in that same space and with your same starting place, what would it look like?
Sorry.
I'm blowing your mind.
You have, does that mean you have $50,000 for me, Jay? I'm kidding. It's interesting. My initial response is the same, but more. And I definitely. So what I'm alluding to is that what I made is what I in the end what I made is what I wanted. The difference is like there's some things I didn't get finished that I would have gotten finished. Where the ceilings were not covered, I would have covered ceilings. Where the floors were not covered, I would have covered floors. The pinwheels would have actually worked. So I really think I would have done the same, just more.
Okay. So there weren't the discoveries you made along the way by the interaction with materials that were chosen out of necessity or choices you made based on the amount of time and capacity you had, you don't feel like affected the creative outcome?
I do not. Because materials came to me in different ways. Materials were, I'd come back to the role, the screen material that I used in the fire room. I was at ASU Surplus and I bought a roll of screen material without any idea what I was going to do with it over the summer. Before my project even started, I was there with my dad and my sister. And I was like, this is cool, I'm going to buy it. And so then when I was working on that space and I was experimenting with materials, I had this roll there and it became the perfect material. And so then I ordered 4 more. And a lot of the materials I used, that's how it happened.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Is that okay? Jake, unless you wanted to ask your second question. Because I feel like there's a couple things arising from this that I want to tease at just a little bit. One is like questioning what is your relationship to material and what do you want the audience's relationship to be to material. So thinking about, is materiality about the potential of things that you couldn't have because of expense, or is it there's something about the material that you had that was important? So that's one. And then the question to kind of like tease a little bit at what Jake is asking is, if you did have 5 people, what are the expertise that you wish you had in the room that you just didn't have the time to have yourself? Like what kinds of expertise would you employ in the process of making that would have been useful for you to have on for like 2 months?
Right. Material was a big deal, but I didn't want to go into it. And what I mean by that is I acknowledge both now in this moment and back when I was writing that anything I would like right now, if I feel hesitant to talk to you about material because it would be a whole lot more writing. And what I mean by that is material is a big deal, and a lot of the work I've done in the past, was about reusing of material. And it was about reusing materials that I found in the space or repurposing and, recycling, and like I could really go into detail about how that feeds into my values. But I felt like it wasn't necessary in that it was present in the work. I didn't want to go down that path. It felt like a wormhole in a way because, yeah.
It informed a lot of your decisions.
I'm sorry?
Your approach to materials, it informed every decision you made about what to use in that space.
I think the space, I agree. I don't disagree, right? But I think that there were other things that were equally as informative. I don't think it was like the driving force. force. It was a driving force. You know, whereas looking at the 4 concepts, the site-specific work, the video and sound, the real-time processing, the user interactivity, that those were the things I was focused on. To say that other things didn't exist would be, you know, I think silly. And yes, material was a big one, but I think that material is, I don't think that, yeah, I think it's a big one, but I just didn't think it was something I needed to talk about.
I think this is something you can continue to explore, and for me, it has to do with, I keep like, what's flashing in my head right now is hot glue, hot glue, hot glue, hot glue.
Right, yeah.
Because I think it has to do for the, what is the role of craft in your work? And I don't necessarily mean, I'm using craft 2 ways,
Right.
not just in terms of design elements, but the idea of crafting, right? Because I think like, you've talked a lot about touching the materials, right? So in some ways, my impression seeing you alongside this work and then hearing you talk about it is that it's the act of the doing and the act of the interacting to make the work that's important to you.
Right.
And I think that then also relates like, you know, to what you were just talking about, like feeling things. So I think that's also something to consider in a relationship, not only to what is made and wanting people to do that, but like what's important to you as a maker.
Right.
Just to jump off of that in terms of observation, there's something about the materials that you use that have like a certain familiarity for those who are not familiar with tech. So I think in that idea of crafting also comes back to materials that people are familiar, like know, but don't always associate with technology. And so there is a sort of an implicit resistance in the materials that you're using against sort of like that techno aesthetic of like plastics and metals and things that have to be machined in order to work.
Right.
And that kind of just relates to what Karen's saying, that's present in the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And I mean, I've been crafting since I was a kid, right? So for me, that's, you know, just there, if you will. So, you know. Yeah. It's interesting.
It seems like a good time to open up
Questions.
Yes.
I'm curious about the knowledge gained, experience, the product, and whatever was most meaningful. Where would you go from here,
Right.
with what you learned from this experience? What would be the next step in your career or in your investigation, or what's the meaningful piece that you are going to carry forward? Or maybe you won't, maybe, I don't know, I'm just curious what's next.
Right. I think that I have been accumulating skills for 36 years now. And what's meaningful is knowing that the skills I have acquired are very valuable and that they can be applicable in a multitude of different ways, so that I can design media for a piece and feel confident in the choices I'm making, or that I could go and build an interactive installation and again feel confident in the choices I'm making. So I think that if I were to think about what's next, aside from moving to Florida with my husband, to be with my family, I think that what's next is to continue to basically explore my toolkit, explore in any capacity. I think I'm going to continue to want to find ways of intersecting movement and technology. I think that, like Jessica literally just identified, is that I have more of a proclivity towards working with materials that don't necessarily get associated with tech. So also translating that, you know, to the body and I don't know, I think that moving forward, I'm just going to take it all and make some stuff, really. I would also really like to educate. That's a huge part of who I am, and what I thoroughly enjoy doing is sharing my knowledge with others. I believe in open source, so I want to be an open source. That's my answer this time. Is it great? Anybody else? How about
I
on
have
this?
another one of those.
Sure, Jake. Yes.
In your document, you talk relatively frequently about the desire to give your audience agency when it comes to the way they interact with the installation, in this case, or your work in general. Can you talk to me about your definition of agency and how you differentiate it from interactivity?
Ooh, that's fantastic. Okay, let's start with my definition of agency. Agency to choose. That we have, if I, as a participant, that I have the autonomy and the ability to make choices in how I do what I'm going to do. And so I think that those things are in tandem or parallel when it comes to interactivity. I think that agency is kind of built in or inherent in interactivity, at least the way I'm picturing it from the perspective of my project. It would be interesting to spend some time thinking about if there's a situation where there's an interactive installation where a participant did not feel as though they had agency. Actually, I can think of them right now, so I've already like just flipped the switch on myself. Dang it, hate it when that happens. I think that in interactive work, the possibility of agency can be present, but doesn't have to be. That's my answer.
But you feel like agency was present in this work?
I definitely do. I mean, I can take it back to like, you could choose to walk in the door, you know, like that's the first choice that people had. The moment you cross the threshold, you could choose the direction you wanted to go. When you got into a doorway, you could choose to go into the spirit room or not. You could choose to touch the walls and the water. Like, there was choice everywhere in the project for me. At least that's the way I was viewing agency, is that I wanted to provide opportunity where people could choose to interact with the work themselves, watch someone else interact with the work, or not interact at all and leave, essentially.
Okay. So my reason for asking, just generally wanting to know the definition you were using for self is, maybe I would challenge you on the nature of agency, and that agency needs, at least this is my definition, and I'm not arguing that it's the definitive one, so to speak, but agency means that the person has the ability to affect the environment or the work itself. That there's an impact that goes beyond the choice of how they consume or experience. And so, and that may or may not apply, and it may or may not be important, but maybe if you're thinking about the concept of agency, that work at some points that you do may want to include that option. Because nothing about how people interacted with this piece left a trail, you know what I'm saying, or affected the outcome for the person who came behind them. And none of that's necessary. I just think that when you think about the nature of agency and collective outcomes, or the way a person can be affected by or affect the work, that it might be interesting to think about in the future. So just put that out there.
Thank you.
All right. So I think that concludes the question and answer portion.
Yeah, I was looking to see if anybody online had a question, but I didn't see any.
Didn't even pick it up. All right.
Can't read through it.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I mean, you can hold on to it.
People
staff and call you back.
Sorry I didn't answer your questions. I'll email you.
Sounds good. Yep.